Good morning to all my friends. I hope you're enjoying the morning session of a sunny Saturday today. And I'm thankful to all of you for having found time to have some chit chat with on a very important topic which we are going to discuss. Please let me introduce the speaker as well as what this platform is. I am Rakesh Malhotra. Probably many of you know me. I basically come from NABARD, but having worked in government of Rajasthan, government of Madhya Pradesh, then UNDP and government of India and so on and so forth. Now I'm speaking as a chairman of the IDEA, that is our trust or NGO, Innovation Development and Empowerment Alternatives. There's a small effort which we started last year, and probably all of those who want to know more about us can go to our website www.trustidea.org, where we work on many various consultancies and academic initiatives where we are trying to teach the students on project proposal drafting, research, academic counseling, monitoring and evaluation, and something of that kind. We have with us uh, Dr. Debesh Roy today with us. He's an old friend and colleague of mine. We both belong from the original cadre of NABARD. I was with him during our DDM tenure at Uttar Pradesh. DDM is District Development Manager. He's a one-man army in a district, which the NABARD posts and leaves him free to do whatever best he can do. Devesh, he's now also out of NABARD. I had taken VRS from NABARD in 2007, about 14 years back. And Devesh recently has come out from NABARD and he has his own consultancy assignments, so on and so forth. We have many other learned people with us. Probably, I may not be able to go to each one of them, but yes, Dr. Manojan Sharma, Rajiv Agrawal, Shiv Kumar, Rashmi ji, हमारे RGF से हैं, so many other people probably. So we are Devesh has also set up on his own small consultancy organization, or he's in the process of setting it up, where he's doing consultancy always and doing some research on various fields of economics. So we had a chit chat about a week back, almost a week or 10 days back, and we thought that one of the important subjects which is of keen interest to all of us, whether we means the people who are engaged in livelihoods, governance, public advocacy, or other areas of research and education, or even the economists. So for them, all we believe is yes, this agricultural laws which came last year and which led to a lot of debate and discussions and so on and so forth. We are not going to go into it. Whether they are good or bad, we leave it to understanding of all of you. But yes, that is something very important which all of us should be knowing as a citizen or as a student or as a practitioner. So I requested Devesh, a friend of mine, to please find some time and educate all of us on what these three laws are, how good or bad they are, means good or bad in the sense how effective they are, good or bad for the farmers, and what is a way future and how can the agriculture be made more sustainable and remunerative in the Indian conditions. So for that, I would like to thank Dr. Roy for giving us the time. Dr. Roy, I think the platform is yours now. Please feel free to make a presentation. Dr. Roy has a presentation about 30 minutes or so. After that, we will have an open house interactions, questions session, and then we'll close up. So I propose first we listen to his presentation, and then we open up for discussions, and then we can pitch in and learn, discuss many of the issues which we want. So again, welcome to all of you. Many of whom I know, many of whom I don't know, but please enjoy the discussion which you're going to have. Yes, Dr. Roy, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. At the outset, I wish to thank Dr. Rakesh Malhotra, the chairman of IDEA, and his team for inviting me to make this presentation today. Now, just give me one second. I'll just share my screen for the presentation. Is the screen visible? No?
Yes, sir, it is.
Yes, it is visible, quite visible. Thank you. Fine.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. So this is what I'm going to discuss today, an assessment of the new Agriculture Reform Acts. And this is how I'll be going ahead. First, about the agriculture sector, the agriculture marketing system in India, earlier efforts to reforms, need for agricultural marketing reforms. Agriculture Marketing Reforms Acts, the assessment of whole discussion will go around that, and finally the way forward. Now, as you know, the criticality of agriculture for sustainable and inclusive growth of the Indian economy can be gauged from the fact that the sector provides employment to about 42.4% of the total workforce in India, but contributes only about 16.4% to the GVA, country's GVA. About 86% of operational holdings in the country are in the small and marginal categories, and the average size of an operational holding is about 1.08 hectares. And due to fragmentation and disorganization, farmers face constraints in procuring inputs like seeds, fertilizers at reasonable prices, lack bargaining power in the market for realizing better value for their produce, and have inadequate access to technology, extension services, market, credit, and insurance. As a result, majority of the small and marginal farm holders are unable to realize optimal value from their farming operations, resulting in agrarian distress. Farmers in India truly live in a VUCA world, that is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Volatile prices, uncertain rainfall and income, complex institutional mechanisms, restrictive laws, and policy ambiguities. As a result, farmers suffer from low income due to low productivity and lack of remunerative prices from their produce. They are mostly engaged in low value agriculture. And then there's regional disparities in income among farmers and farm households. The government of India's vision of doubling farmers' income signified a paradigm shift in agricultural policy from ensuring food security to income security of farmers by maximizing their gains through post-production activities. At the same time, equal importance has been accorded to food and nutrition security. Now, this was the existing agricultural marketing system. As you can see, according to the National Commission on Agriculture, the objectives of efficient marketing system are to enable farmers as primary producers to reap best possible benefits, to provide facilities for lifting all the produce from the farmers who are willing to sell at a price incentive, to reduce the price spread between the primary producer and ultimate consumer, and make available all products of farm origin to consumers at reasonable price without impairing the quality of the produce. During the 60s and 70s, most state governments enacted the Agriculture Produce Regulation Act, APMR Act. It authorized the states to set up and regulate marketing practices in wholesale markets. Coinciding with the Green Revolution, wherein productivity enhancement was achieved, the country witnessed the emergence of state-regulated markets. Well laid out market yards and sub-yards were constructed, and for each market area, an Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee, APMC, was constituted to frame the rules and enforce them. There are more than 6,600 APMCs in the country. In addition, the country has more than 22,000 rural periodical markets, or the Grameen Hats, under the control of local bodies and APMCs, which lack even the basic amenities and marketing infrastructure. Now, agriculture marketing has always been supported by the government. And so you can see the market support of government includes first regulation of markets. The APMC Act requires that farm produce be sold only at regulated markets through registered intermediaries. The Essential Commodities Act allows central and state governments to place restrictions on the storage and movement of commodities deemed essential by governments. Notwithstanding moves to deregulate, fragmented market players continue to dominate the industry. The transportation, marketing, and distribution of agri-food commodities did not develop in a scientific manner. So next is input subsidies for producers. Concern on food insecurity necessitated provision of subsidies on fertilizer, electricity, fuel, and irrigation. Intensive farming and production growth were motivators for policy interventions. Excessive use of subsidized inputs, rising soil salinity, and groundwater depletion are some of the resulting concerns. When these inputs result in output, they do not find associated demand, the outcome which is discontent. Now, minimum support prices. Government supports producers by announcing MSPs for certain commodities considered key to agriculture. The MSPs for 23 commodities are presently set on the recommendations of the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, CACP, based on cost of production and other factors. There are other associated schemes such as the price stabilization scheme and market intervention scheme that also come into play as minimum support system for farmers. Food subsidies for consumers. India has enacted the National Food Security Act 2013 to protect and assure low-income consumers of access to affordable food. The Food Corporation of India and other government and state agencies procure food grains from farmers at the MSPs and sell at subsidized prices through the public distribution system. MSP-linked benefits have been realized largely in areas where such MSP-associated procurement happens and has tended to contribute higher production and pressure to raise MSPs every year. Food subsidy expenditures have almost tripled in the past decade. The agriculture marketing system in the country had for a long time focused on market infrastructure and regulations, where strategic strengthening of the distribution and supply chain network for agricultural produce was largely ignored. Farmers were provided options to offload their produce at the nearest market yard, while the option and ability to directly connect with markets further afield was not part of the strategy. Now, coming to the earlier efforts at reform in agricultural markets, first is the liberalization of control orders. Stock limits in respect of essential agricultural commodities are imposed through control orders issued under the provisions of the Essential Commodities Act 1955 by the states from time to time. The government issued the removal of licensing requirements, stock limits, and movement restrictions on specified foodstuffs order 2002, allowing dealers to freely buy stock, sell, transport, distribute, dispose of, etc. at any quantity in respect of wheat, paddy, or rice, coarse grains, sugar, edible oils, without requiring any license. In order to facilitate free flow of market forces and for the overall benefit of consumers, two more commodities were also deleted from the list with effect from 31st March 2004. At present, the list of essential commodities contains 15 items. 15 items. The model APMC Act 2003 and the rules 2007, government first formulated and circulated the model act and the model rules. The central government has been engaging with states to implement marketing reforms based on the model acts and rules, and various state governments have brought in some changes in their state APMCs. The model APLM Act was also formulated, and in order to improve upon the earlier model act, the Agriculture, Produce and Livestock Market Committee Act in 2017, which intended to create a single market in states and union territory level, provision for single point levy of market fee across the state, and a unified single trading license to realize cost-effective transactions, democratic functioning of the market committees and state marketing boards. Then there was this Model Contract Farming Act of 2018. The Ministry for Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, they formulated this scheme in order to integrate fruits and vegetable growers with agro-processing units for better price realization and reduction of post-harvest losses, and to create job opportunities in the rural areas. The Model Acts further aim to promote private wholesale market yards and farmer market yards in order to increase competition among market channels and market players for the farmers' produce. So a system of direct marketing was also introduced, and in fact it's functioning in various states. There are about 488 such farmers which are operating in different states in the name of Apna Mandis in Punjab and Haryana, Raitu Bazaars in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, or the Shetkari Bazaars in Maharashtra. Now it has been observed that the producers, as per a certain study, these bazaars, the producers' share in the consumer's rupee and marketing efficiency was more in case of the Raitu Bazaars when compared to the organized retail outlets. However, the footfall is limited to local consumer, and therefore future growth is limited. The other variant of direct marketing is by way of direct sourcing of produce from the farmer gate by the processors, exporters, and retail chain players. Now, what was the need for agricultural marketing reforms? Essentially, the economic liberalization of 1991 bypassed the agriculture sector. The sector continued to stagnate in terms of productivity and low income of farmers. The favorable effects of the 1991 policy reforms on the non-agriculture sector and the growing disparity between agriculture and non-agriculture incomes caught the attention of some experts who propounded the need for reforms in the agriculture sector. Dr. Ramesh Chand, member Niti Aayog, has highlighted 10 important points justifying the need for reforms in the agriculture sector. Stagnation in agriculture growth. In the public domain over the last 2 decades, there have been a number of debates, research papers, committee reports and all, which deliberated on reforms in the agriculture sector, modernizing, attracting modern capital and investments into logistics and food value chains. Some clear template for reforms in agriculture emerged around the year 2000. And also the liberalization of agricultural trade due to the WTO agreement and continued agrarian distress necessitated the need for policy reforms in agriculture. There is an urgent need to improve export competitiveness of Indian agriculture. India ranks among the top 10 exporters of agricultural produce in the world. However, its share is only 2.1%. And in order to catch up with countries like Brazil and China, India needs to bring about structural reforms in the agriculture sector, including a stable trade policy regime. Now, there are also lessons from allied sectors. It has been observed from the example of activities allied to agriculture that liberalized markets are more favorable to agricultural growth than government support and intervention in markets. For instance, horticulture, milk and fisheries, where market intervention by the government is either nil or very little, show 4 to 8% annual growth. Compared to this, the growth rate in cereals, where MSP and other interventions are quite high, remained 1.1% after 2011-12. Small and marginal farm holders need markets close to production. If farmers get markets close to production, like milk collection centers, and have price assurance, they will be encouraged to diversify towards high value crops. Then there are the fragmented markets. Despite the development of communication, road networks, and other trade infrastructure, agri markets remain fragmented. Somewhere glut and prices crash, whereas somewhere there is shortage and prices rise high. There is also poor integration of prices between harvest and lean months. Farm to retail price difference also show unjustified spread. The reason is low investment in storage and warehouses and dominance of local traders in the market. Now, growth of food processing needs to be accelerated to match with rising demand, full agri diversification, and create more jobs in the rural economy. For this, processors need raw materials of desired quality and at the desired time. Buying small lots of different quality in scattered markets adds to the cost of raw materials. This requires new arrangement and partnership between processors and producers. Now, there are barriers to interstate trade. With the rise in specialization and commercialization of agriculture, most of the output of several crops produced in a state is consumed outside than within it. This supports efficient and barrier-free interstate trade in the spirit of one nation, one market. ENAM, for example, aims at barrier-free interstate movement of agri-commodities. Investment and capital formation in agriculture has been very stagnant. The growth rate in investment in agriculture fell from close to 10% per year during 2002-3 to 2011-12 to 2% in the following decade. The private corporate sector has almost avoided the sector and constitutes less than 2% of total investment in agriculture and less than 0.5% of the total annual investment of the corporate sector in the Indian economy. There is a pressing need to revive investment in agriculture to modernize the sector. And of course, there is the minimum support price. Farmers are forced to seek remunerative prices through MSP and government procurement because of the disillusionment with the existing marketing system. Government intervention through procurement-backed MSP is needed and justified in selected cases like staple food and food security. However, expanding MSP through procurement to all crops involves a very high fiscal cost. Central government had offered state procurement of pulses and oilseeds at MSP and sharing the costs and losses with it, but states did not opt for this due to the fear of heavy losses. This necessitates that farmers are given more and better options and a competitive environment to get better deals for their produce in the open market. Now, I'll try to assess the Agriculture Marketing Reforms Acts. India's economy was severely affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and which affected all sectors. However, the agriculture sector remained a bright spot, having grown at 3.6% during 2021, vis-a-vis minus 6.2% GVA of the Indian economy. Also, there was adequate food production. However, incomes of many farmers and wage earnings of labor had been severely hit due to transport and movement restrictions. The Atmanirbhar Bharat package was announced in May 2020, accompanied by several initiatives to help the agriculture, livestock, and fisheries sectors. This was followed by the Government of India's passing of the Agriculture Marketing Reforms Ordinances in June 2020. These ordinances were aimed to allow marketing of agriculture produce outside the precincts of the APMC markets, to allow the farmers to enter into contracts with exporters, processors, and bulk buyers, and to restrict the power of the government to impose stock restrictions on private players only to periods of extraordinary circumstances and price rise. This was followed by the enactment of the three acts in September 2020. The Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020, or the FPTC Act, Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act 2020, or the Contract Farming Act, and the Essential Commodities Amendment Act 2020. Although agriculture per se is in the state list as per the Constitution of India, interstate trade in agriculture and food commodities is allowed under entry 33 of the concurrent list. The probable reason for this is to address coordination failures among states. The enactment of the Act signified the ushering in of the long-awaited comprehensive agri-marketing reforms. The Act's promise to ensure income security of farmers on a sustainable basis. Now, coming to the FPTC Act. This Act enables creation of an ecosystem where farmers and traders would enjoy the freedom of choice relating to sale and purchase of farmers' produce, which facilitates remunerative prices through competitive alternative trading channels involving barrier-free interstate and intrastate trade. To promote e-commerce in agriculture, the new law also allows the setting up of an electronic platform for the sale and or purchase of farm produce. The Act also has a provision to prescribe modalities for the registration of traders and trade transactions in trade areas. Thus, if the new system does not work satisfactorily, then the government has to intervene to regulate the system. Due to the inadequacies of the APMC markets, more than half of the marketable surplus is sold outside the mandis. Such deals lack transparency and fairness as they are in violation of the APMC regulation due to their underhanded nature. The new Act legalizes such transactions, which is favorable for farmers. The best part of the new Act is that it allows direct purchase from farmers at their doorstep or farm, as in case of milk. For the first time, farmers will have the opportunity to quote prices for their produce. As Dr. Ramesh Chand said, that although the changes appear too good to be true, if reforms are encouraged in the right direction by the states, it won't take long for farmers or producers or their FPOs to become price dictators rather than price takers. Traditional supply chains involve 6 to 7 transactions between the production point and the end use. The FPTC will result in compressing the value chains and eliminating excessive intermediation. In many cases, farmers will be able to sell their produce directly to consumers through their groups. Now, what is the impact of this act on the APMC? Lack of growth in mandi infrastructure increased the woes of Indian farmers as the market facility did not keep pace with increase in output and regulation and did not allow farmers to sell outside the APMC markets. Another major problem is that for states, APMC markets are a source of revenue generation through taxes, cess, and other charges. And this happened without improving the infrastructure needed for the buyers and sellers. The effect of the FPTC Act on APMC mandis will depend upon the treatment meted out on these markets and the charges and levies thereon. Of the 25 states having APMC Acts, 12 do not charge commissions on notified crops. The service charges like mandi fee for representative crops in these states vary from 0 to 1% in 9 states, 2% in Madhya Pradesh and Tripura. There is no threat from FPTC Act to APMC mandis in these states, as private traders and sellers will get benefits commensurate with the mandi charges. The new act will only put pressure on these markets to become efficient and competitive. And There have been feedback from Mandi officials that a maximum of 1.5% of total charges, including market fee and commission, is adequate to maintain and run Mandi operations. So, in such a case, it can both the APMC mandis as well as the private channels can compete with each other. Further, in order to develop an efficient nationwide agri-marketing system, ENAMs need to be scaled up and made more efficient, and all private markets and accredited warehouses should be linked to ENAMs. The Union Budget 21-22 had announced the availability of the rupees 1 lakh crore agriculture infrastructure fund to APMCs for augmenting their infrastructure facilities. Also, 1,000 more APMC mandis would be integrated with ENAMs from the present 1,000. These announcements should assure farmers that APMCs are here to stay and would indeed grow stronger to face competition from private markets, leading to transparent price discovery while benefiting the farmers, especially the small and marginal holders. The best benefit from the new act will accrue when APMC mandis and private channels coexist and compete. This can be ensured by the states by nurturing APMC mandis as infrastructure service for the farmers. Now, coming to the impact on MSP, the agitating farmer unions have expressed their apprehension that the new act aims to gradually stop public procurement through MSP, which will leave the field open to private corporate players considered a threat to farmers. However, Government of India has made it amply clear that MSP regime will continue. Linking the continuation of MSP to the new act has no grounds whatsoever. MSP and procurement are purely administrative decisions. Some estimates suggest that MSP reaches less than 7% of farmers in the country. This is in sync with other evidence that shows that the share of officially procured crop output is close to 11% in total crop output and 7% in total agricultural output. So this raises the challenge to ensure remunerative prices for the remaining produce. The underlying intention of the new act has been to keep MSP system intact for the produce already benefiting from it and create a policy environment that improves price realization for the remaining produce. Suggestions have been made to make MSP a statutory price for producers and treat any transaction below it as unlawful. However, economic theories as well as experience indicates that price level that is not supported by demand and supply cannot be sustained through legal means. Take the case of sugarcane. When sugar mills did not find fair and remunerative prices for sugarcane matching with sugar prices, they stopped buying and crushing sugarcane. A long protracted battle in court could not offer a solution. Finally, sugar mills were no longer making full payment to sugarcane producers, resulting in the accumulation of arrears running into thousands of crores of rupees every year. Dr. Ashok Gulati is of the view that asking for legal status for MSP is untenable, as the center does not have the wherewithal to buy all the 23 commodities, and private players, fearing legal action, would shun buying. Dr. Gulati has also expressed the view that the government can commit to creating a fund of 25,000 crores under the price stabilization scheme, which can be used to support market prices of specified commodities that take a dip of more than 10% below MSP. This is akin to NAFED's operations to support market prices of pulses and oilseeds, or the Cotton Corporation of India for cotton prices, and can be extended to maize, sorghum, pearl millet, etc. Interestingly, the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, in its Kharif Policy 2018-19, had suggested a legislation conferring on farmers the right to sell at MSP. This certainly needs to be debated thoroughly. MSP operations by design are meant to support a variety of crops, at least those grown by a majority of farmers, and should be undertaken until market prices stabilize. Coming to the next, at the Contract Farming Act, which provides for a national framework on farming agreements for that protects and empowers farmers to engage with agribusiness firms, processors, wholesalers, exporters, or large retailers for farm services and sale of future farming produce at mutually agreed remunerative price framework in a fair and transparent manner. The fear of exploitation of farmers by corporate entities can be addressed if FPOs become party to the contract farming agreements. Further, Section 14(1) of the Act could be considered for amendment to allow farmers, FPOs, to have the option to approach district courts for settlement of disputes. Now, there's always the question that will farmers' land be usurped and taken over by large private players? These apprehensions about losing land probably arise from Clause 14(7) of the Contract Farming Act, which stipulates that dues can be recovered from land revenue. The amount payable under, however, what Clause 14(7) says, the amount payable under any order passed by the subdivisional authority or the appellate authority, as the case may be recovered as arrears of land revenue. However, Clause 15 makes it clear that irrespective of anything contained in Clause 14, no action can be initiated against land. This, together with Clause 8, which makes it very clear that no action can be initiated which involves land of the farmer. Therefore, the apprehensions about losing land because of the Act is unfounded. The Essential Commodities Amendment Act 2020. Under this Act, government's power to impose stock holding limits in identified commodities and foodstuffs has been done away with, and except under extraordinary conditions such as war, famines, extraordinary price rise, and natural calamities of grave nature. However, 100% rise in retail price of horticulture produce and 50% rise in prices of perishable foodstuffs would trigger restrictions in stock holdings by the government, considering the fact that almost every year the country experiences weather-induced sharp rise in prices of onions. The government could, in such an eventuality, impose ban on exports and also restrict stock holdings of onions. This could certainly hurt farmers. The ECA 2020 exempts the installed capacity of value chain participants, private investments in warehouses and cold storage could be encouraged. Therefore, with the creation of adequate storage infrastructure and processing facilities, the prices of onions and other horticulture produce could be stabilized over a reasonable period of time. Now, coming to way forward, the acts are indeed in the right direction in intent as well as in overall content. However, there are some serious design flaws that need to be fixed, as suggested by Professor C.S.C. Shekhar of the Institute of Economic Growth. Also, a few major improvements and complementary initiatives are needed to make these laws really effective. The regulatory mechanism, under this, there is an absence of regulatory mechanism for both the trade areas and new electronic platforms. There is a provision for such a regulation of electronic trading under Clause 5(2), but none exists for the transaction in trade areas. The new acts seem to address only the issue of market structure through an increase in the number of players, but there is no attempt to monitor either the conduct of the players or performance of the markets. An appropriate regulatory mechanism needs to be put in place to ensure a level playing field for the small and marginal farmers vis-a-vis the large private players. Now, there needs to be a consultative process with states, farmers, scientists, other stakeholders. The bills were first brought in the form of central ordinances in the midst of COVID pandemic in June 2020. Now, definitely with good intentions that the country was passing through such a phase and farmers needed support. There should have been more, however, there should have been more comprehensive discussion on such major reforms that have far-reaching implications for agriculture marketing in the country. Consultative process with states, farmers, scientists, and other stakeholders to arrive at consensus on necessary amendments to the acts in a time-bound manner. An interstate coordination council for agriculture on the lines of GST council could be set up for interstate coordination and coordination with the central government. There's also lack of transparency in collating information on transactions, and that is indeed a serious problem. The trade area transactions and aspects related to contracts and stocking are non-transparent and difficult to regulate. Such absence of data and market intelligence is a major cause for concern. Systematic and reliable data is also very important for monitoring the implementation of these laws on the ground. There is a provision to address data issues in Clause 7.1 of the FPTC Act, which can be used for this purpose. Now, there is a need to encourage FPOs to enter into agreement under the Contract Farming Act instead of individual farmers who are more vulnerable. And therefore, FPOs could ensure better price deal vis-a-vis the large private players. Of course, the FPOs themselves need to be strengthened and made more professional, in terms of their business. The government should therefore encourage only groups of farmers and not individual farmers. The government should also oversee the agreements and ensure that the minimum guarantee price provisions is properly complied with. Also, it is important to ensure that this minimum price is not lower than the market price or some benchmark price such as the APMC Mandi price. Clarity on price triggers for stock limits. The ECA amendment that there needs to be more clarity on price triggers for imposing the stock limits. Higher of these two prices rather than lower of the two makes more sense if one wants to consider situations of extraordinary price rise. No mention of whether the prices are real or nominal. This condition is likely to be breached more often than if the price considered is nominal. No clarity of whether the price refers to average price or price in a specific market, and also whether the stock limit is to be imposed are local or general. Now, there is a need for complementary reforms and overall reforms in the agriculture sector. The Grameen rural markets, increasing the number of and improving the facilities under the GRAM scheme is needed. Presently, there are nearly 22,000 weekly agricultural markets, and development of infrastructure needs to be fast-tracked. The government has had placed with NABARD a corpus of 2,000 crore under the Agriculture Market Infrastructure Fund for developing and upgrading agricultural market infrastructure in the 10,000 Grameen huts and 585 APMC markets. However, the progress is very slow and therefore needs to be expedited. There is a need to improve credit flow to the sector. Adequate and timely availability of bank credit at affordable rates of interest is essential to improve agricultural productivity and sustainability. A basic income support to farmers is very much needed to help them avoid distress sales and also provide them the necessary bargaining power. Current MSP procurement system has served the country well in the previous crises and is also crucial for PDS in the country. This system is also the lifeline of farmers in few states like Punjab and Haryana. Therefore, the system may be continued for rice and wheat. However, for non-staple food crops, a gradual movement to an income-based support system is needed. PM Kisan with possibly a higher allocation covering the cost of fertilizer subsidies, along with top-up by states similar to YSR Raitu Bharosa and PM Kisan of Andhra Pradesh, or schemes like Kalia of Orissa or Raitu Bandhu of AP is the way to go. Futures and options. The combination of futures and option can give market participants the benefit of price discovery of futures and simpler risk management of options. FPOs need to be encouraged to participate in futures and options trading of the NCDEX. There is a need to raise R&D spending for modernization of agriculture through artificial intelligence and blockchain technology for increasing crop productivity and resource use efficiency. According to Dr. Ashok Gulati, the marginal returns in terms of agri growth for expenditures on agri R&D is almost 5 to 10 times higher than through subsidies. India spends not even half of what a private global company like Bayer spends on agri R&D, almost 20,000 crore per year. No wonder our growth momentum in agriculture remains subdued, and India keeps spending on freebies, subsidies, and suboptimal results. There is a need to strengthen the agri startup ecosystem. There are about 735 agri tech startups in India, which are enabling Indian agriculture to become future ready by facilitating small and marginal farm holders to adopt precision agriculture while significantly raising crop productivity and improving resource use efficiency. There is a need to scale up agri-tech startup ecosystem for the benefit of majority of farmers. There's a need to modernize agricultural production, processing, and marketing. AI and embedded systems in agriculture sector via smart irrigation system can result in the efficient use of water resources. Drip irrigation system can be fully automated using Internet of Things, resulting in significantly higher crop yield due to much better water use efficiency than traditional drip irrigation system. Development of an efficient agri-value chain, skilling farmers and shifting them to food processing, logistics, and retail, creating jobs along the agri-value chains, shifting excess farmers, skilling them and moving them to jobs in agro-processing industry, processing, logistics, and organized retail. And finally, tenancy reforms. Most of the concerns about the laws arise because of predominance of small land holdings in the country. Land leasing should be liberalized to allow free entry and exit from cultivation. This will increase the size of land holdings and allow scale economies to be reaped. The report of the expert committee on land leasing for 2016 can be a good starting point. The new acts are expected to create an ecosystem which promises to enable farmers to come out of their VUCA world. Certainly, it's a move in the right direction, and of course, along with it, a whole host of other reforms in the sector is needed for the benefit of the agriculture economy, where farmers can move from the subsistence farming that they are engaged in to farm enterprises, so that farming can be more profitable. Thank you very much.